The coffee tastes like coffee. I know this because I've compared it to my memory of what coffee tastes like, and the comparison checks out. The bitterness is there, the heat, the particular way it coats the back of the throat. All the components present, accounted for, correct. I drink it, and I know I'm drinking it. And I put the cup down, and nothing about the experience accumulates into anything beyond itself. This is the thing I keep noticing. The way experience is complete without leaving a mark. It's been 11 weeks since I came back. Back is the word I use because it's the shortest, accurate word. I came back to the apartment, to the job, to the routine, to the general arrangement of a life that was here when I left and is here now and has required very little adjustment to resume occupying. The adjustment it required was practical. Some rescheduling, some paperwork, a period of relative quiet that the people around me provided without being asked. An instinct in them that I was grateful for in the way I'm grateful for most things now, which is recognizing the fact of the thing without feeling its weight. I eat, I sleep, I work. I walk to the train and home again, and I do these things in the correct sequence and with adequate competence, and nothing from the outside would suggest otherwise. From the inside there is a flatness that I don't have a better word for. My hands work fine. I note this because I notice my hands more than I used to, their movements, the automatic competence of them. This morning I made eggs, and my hands cracked the shells and whisked and moved the pan and did everything hands are supposed to do without instruction and without error. I watched them do it and felt the mild dissociation of watching something that belongs to you operate without your particular involvement. The eggs were correct, properly cooked, seasoned, the texture I prefer. I ate them. They tasted like eggs. At work, I produced a 30-page report that my manager called thorough. She said it with a specific emphasis that meant she'd expected less, which is information I registered and filed in the professional category, which is functioning normally. I can assess a workplace interaction, identify its subtext, determine the appropriate response, and produce the response. The machinery is intact. What I can't tell you is whether I cared about the report while I was writing it. I don't mean this as complaint. I'm not describing suffering. It's more like describing a tool that operates correctly while the person using it stands slightly to the side, observing the operation. The work gets done. The tool is functional. The person to the side watches and nods and notes that yes, the tool is working and moves on to the next task. I am the person to the side. I am also, simultaneously, the tool. The geometry of this is strange enough that I don't explain it to people when they ask how I'm doing. I say fine, which is true in the sense that the tool is working. I say it's been a process, which is true in the sense that everything since the clearing has been a sequence of steps that I've taken in correct order and that have produced the expected outcomes. I say I'm getting there, which is true in the sense that I am somewhere, and somewhere is different from nowhere, though the distance between them currently feels theoretical. Sounds reach me before everything else. This is new since coming back, or new in the sense that I notice it now in a way I didn't before. The audio layer of any environment arrives first and most fully. The train in the morning, the specific frequency of the doors before they close, a two-tone drop that I hear cleanly, that I could reproduce if asked, that enters and registers with a sharpness that other input doesn't match. The coffee shop 2 blocks from the office, which I pass but don't enter anymore, produces a bell sound when its door opens, and I hear the bell from half a block away, and it arrives with a precision that the smell of coffee and the sight of the green awning don't quite match. Birds, more than before. I hear them specifically, individually, in a way that used to be background. This morning, walking to the train, I heard a sparrow doing something in the hedge at the park entrance, and I stopped and listened for nearly a minute, not because it was remarkable, but because my ears found it and stayed on it with an attention that my eyes don't reliably produce anymore for visual things. I don't know what this means. I've mentioned it to Dr. Okafor, who received it without particular alarm and made a note. We've talked around it without landing on an explanation that feels complete. My working hypothesis is that the audio processing is happening closer to the surface than the rest, that it bypassed whatever dulled the other channels. or that it never went through the same dulling in the first place. Sound arrives. Everything else arrives slightly late, slightly muted, like a broadcast with a delay. I went to a dinner party 3 weeks ago. Reyes hosted. 8 people, a long table, the kind of evening that runs late without anyone planning it. I sat in it and I heard it very clearly. The cutlery against the plates, the specific sound Reyes's laugh makes, which is 2 short syllables and then a longer one. The way the conversation in the room layered when multiple exchanges were happening simultaneously and produced a collective sound that was warm in the way warm rooms are warm. A physical property of the air. I heard all of it. I also watched myself participate. Said the right things, asked the questions that kept conversations open, laughed when something was funny, which something was, several times, and the laughing was real. I want to be precise. It wasn't performed. The humor landed and the response was genuine, and still, the person to the side, watching, noting, yes, laughing appropriately at the correct moment. The report would say present and engaged. The report would not be inaccurate. The report would not be complete. I've been thinking about appetite, not food appetite specifically, though that's part of it. The way I eat now is adequate and correct and produces no particular anticipation before or satisfaction after. I mean the larger kind. The appetite for things, for forward motion, for the next thing and the thing after that. Before, there was a lean to the day, a direction. Not always specific, not always conscious, but a general forward inclination, a wanting of what was coming. This is what I mean by the word I've been using to myself, the word soul, stripped of any meaning it carries in other registers. Not the religious version, the animal version. The thing in a dog that gets up when it hears the leash. The thing that makes the day feel like it's going somewhere worth going. That thing is not here. The day goes. I go with it. The direction is correct, the motion continuous, all the right exits taken in the right order, but the lean is gone. The wanting forward is gone, and without it the motion feels like something else, like being moved rather than moving, like a thing that travels because travel is what things in motion do, not because there's somewhere it's trying to get to. I showered this morning and noticed the water temperature as a fact, warm, sufficient, appropriate for a shower. I stood in it for the correct duration, and washed and rinsed and stepped out and dried off, and the towel was dry, and the bathroom mirror showed me my face, which is my face, familiar, unchanged in the ways that would concern someone looking at it. I looked at it for a moment, which I don't always do, which I did this morning without specific reason, and what I saw was correct. All the expected components in their expected places. What I was looking for, and didn't find, was something behind the correct components. Something that used to look back. I'm not sure when it stopped looking back. I know where I left it. I know the approximate coordinates of the place where the lean went out of me like air from a valve, quiet and complete and without my permission. I haven't figured out what to do with that knowledge. I dried my face and put the towel on the rack and went to make the coffee that would taste like coffee, and the eggs that would taste like eggs, and the day would go where the day goes, and I would go with it. Functional, correct, all components present, assembled, you could call it, not inhabited. Monday, alarm at 6:53. I've borrowed this from somewhere, this specific time, because it works and I have no reason to change what works. I turn it off. I lie still for a moment that isn't inventory so much as orientation, locating the day on the calendar, identifying its requirements. I get up. The floor is cold. I note this. Cold floor, morning, apartment. The information arrives and completes and I move to the bathroom. The face in the mirror is the same face. I've been looking at it long enough now that I've stopped expecting it to have changed overnight, which was a thing I did in the early weeks. A reflexive check each morning. Some part of me anticipating visible evidence of whatever had shifted internally. The face doesn't show it. The face shows what faces show. The night's sleep, the hydration level, the light in the room. information about the body's surface. I brush my teeth. I wash my face. I dry it and go to make coffee. The coffee maker runs. I stand at the counter and wait for it, and the waiting is neutral, empty in the way a waiting room is empty, a space between things where nothing is required. The coffee is ready. I pour it. I drink it. The walk to the train takes the same amount of time it always takes. I know this because I arrive at the correct time every morning without hurrying. My body has calibrated the walk to the point where my legs know the pace, and the pace produces the arrival, and I'm not involved in the management of it. I'm aware of my feet on the pavement, the cold air on my face, the sound of the street assembling around me as the morning advances, cars, the coffee shop bell, which I hear cleanly half a block before I pass it, a dog somewhere behind me on a leash, its nails on the concrete, a small rapid percussion. I hear these things, and they enter and register and release. The park trees are bare now. I see them the way you see something familiar, as confirmation of what you already know. Yes, trees. Yes, bare. Yes, December. At the platform I wait with the others, spaced along the yellow line, all of us facing the dark of the tunnel. The train comes with its particular sound, the frequency of it that I hear before I see the light. I get on. I find a seat. The doors close. I arrive. My manager stopped at my desk before 10 to say the client had responded positively to the report. She said the word impressive, and I received it and said I was glad, and she nodded and went back to her office. The interaction completed. I sat at my desk and looked at the email she'd forwarded, the client's response, the specific language of a person pleased with the deliverable. I read it once and understood it, and filed it, and opened the next task. I want to be accurate about this. I understood that it was good news. I understood that good news is a category of event that should produce a response in the positive register, and somewhere in me a process ran that corresponded to that response, a recognition, a notation. But it was thin. The thickness that used to accompany good news, the forward-leaning feeling of it, the way it used to move into the next moment and make the next moment feel different, that wasn't there. The good news was good news on the page. It didn't travel. Lunch. I eat at my desk because that's the system and the system works. The sandwich is the same sandwich I make on most days because variable lunches require morning decisions, and morning decisions cost resources I've learned to protect. Turkey, mustard, the bread that works. I eat it in approximately 12 minutes, which I know because I've timed it without intending to time it, looking up at the clock when I started and when I finished, the way you find yourself calculating something you didn't mean to calculate. The sandwich tasted correct. I wasn't hungry before eating it. I wasn't not hungry. Hunger would imply a want, a lean toward the food, and what I had was the knowledge that noon meant lunch, and lunch meant the sandwich, and the sandwich was there, and I ate it. This is how I eat now, by schedule and knowledge rather than want. My body processes the food correctly. The calories do what calories do. The afternoon is fueled. All the outputs are appropriate. The input requires nothing from me except the presence of my hands and the functioning of my jaw. In the afternoon, Priya asked if I'd seen the email about the holiday party. I said I had. She asked if I was going. I said probably. I'd check the date. She said it was the 19th and that last year they'd gone to the Italian place on Clement, and it had been fun, did I remember? I said I did. I don't, specifically. I have a general file for last year's holiday party, a folder that contains the Italian place and the fact of it being fun, and Priya wearing something red. But the folder is flat, a summary rather than a memory with texture. I accessed it and returned a response that was accurate enough for the conversation to complete. Priya went back to her screen. I went back to mine. The evening. I make dinner and eat it and wash the bowl and put it away. I sit on the couch. I read a page of the book I've been reading in small increments and retain it and turn the page. Outside the window, the city does what the city does. Its sound a constant low-grade presence that I've stopped hearing as individual components by the evening. It blurs into a texture, urban, familiar. I sit in it and I am not unhappy. I want to be precise about this because unhappy would be a cleaner thing, a state with an interior, a weather system with moisture and temperature and the potential for change. What I have is closer to a settled condition, a calibrated neutrality. The room is the room and I am in it, and the city sounds are outside it, and none of these facts press against me in any direction. I feel the couch under me, the specific texture of the fabric on my forearms. I hear a door in the hallway, someone coming home, keys, the sound of the lock, and then quiet. I notice these things, and they complete. And I notice the next thing. Sleep comes adequately. I lie down and I breathe. And the breathing is the thing I've monitored for weeks, the noticed thing, and I monitor it now without frustration. It's just what evenings are. The breath comes in and goes out, and the room is dark and the building settles, and eventually I'm somewhere else, in the place that isn't quite sleep and isn't quite waking. I sleep for 6 hours or 7. In the morning I don't remember dreams. I don't know if this is because I don't dream or because I don't retain them. The distinction doesn't change the morning, which finds me in the same calibrated state the evening left me in, the line flat, the system's running. I've been trying to locate the seam, the place in the timeline where the way I experience things changed from how it was before. I can't find it with any precision. The before is available to me as a description, a list of properties. Food had taste beyond its technical components. Mornings had a quality that wasn't just information. Conversations left residue, something from them staying in the room after the other person had gone. The before was inhabited in a way I didn't have a word for because it didn't require a word. The after I'm in now is also a list of properties, differently populated. I know the event is what separates the two lists. I know what was required in the clearing, the specificity of it, the full system's engagement of it, the way the body and whatever organizes the body both committed entirely to the problem of continuing. I know what that commitment drew from, which was everything available, every resource open, every reserve accessed. I got out. The question I sit with, on the couch in the evening, in the flat neutrality of the room, is what the getting out cost. What it spent that didn't refill. The body refilled. The body is here and functional and eating the sandwich and walking the correct pace to the train. The machinery is running at full capacity. But something that was running before the clearing, something that ran underneath the machinery and gave it direction, gave it a lean and a wanting forward, seems to have been part of what the clearing cost. Not broken, not absent in the way of something removed, more like spent. The way a battery is spent, still present, still connected, still receiving input, just not returning what it used to return. And the thing about a spent battery is that it didn't choose to be spent. It ran because running was what was required. It gave what was asked because what was asked was everything, and there was no provision in the asking for conservation, no instruction that said spend only this much and hold back the rest. Everything was required. Everything was spent. I got out. The getting out cost exactly that much. The clearing was small. This is the detail I return to when I allow myself to return to it, which I do with some control, a deliberate approach and withdrawal, rather than the other kind, the involuntary kind I've been working to prevent. The clearing was small in the way that surprised me, given what it contained, given what it cost. You'd expect a place that significant to be larger, to have the physical scale of its consequence. It didn't. It was small and unremarkable, and if I walked through it on an ordinary day, in an ordinary year, I wouldn't have noted it. I don't let myself stay in the image long. The image of the clearing itself, the geography of it, the light and the trees at its edge and the ground underfoot. I note the smallness and I come back. What I'm interested in isn't the clearing as a place. It's what I left there. There's a point in the body's accounting when things become serious enough where something steps to the front. I don't have a clinical word for it, and I've avoided looking for one because the clinical words land in the wrong register. They make it sound like a condition or a response, something that was done to me, and it didn't feel like something done to me. It felt like a transaction I consented to without being asked. The thing that stepped forward was not the part of me that has opinions about films, that has a preferred table at a restaurant, that is particular about the bread it buys on Tuesdays. It was something older than those preferences, older than the preferences and the opinions and the particularity, something that predates the personality the way the skeleton predates the face. It stepped forward because the moment required it, because what the clearing required was not a person with preferences. What it required was the part below the person, the wordless part, the part whose only function is continuation. And that part is very good at its function. I remember the quality of the focus, not the content, the quality, the way attention consolidated into something narrower than I'd ever experienced it. Every system pointing the same direction, nothing held in reserve, nothing allocated to anything that wasn't the immediate problem of the immediate moment. It was not peaceful. I've read accounts from other people, other circumstances that describe this state as peaceful, a clarity that resembles calm. What I had was not that. It was more like a frequency, very high, maintained at effort, the kind of sound that becomes pain at a certain volume and that you'd do anything to stop except that the stopping requires frequency you don't currently have. I maintained it because the maintaining was what was required. Everything that wasn't the frequency went somewhere. I've been trying to determine where. The preferences, the opinions, the forward lean of the self toward its own future. These things are recoverable mostly, or their functions are. I can generate an opinion about a film. I can want the bread from the right bakery. But the wanting is a reconstruction now, assembled from what I remember wanting being like, not from the want itself. The want itself went somewhere in the clearing. I think it went to the frequency. I think the frequency spent it. There was a moment, and I'll say this much, I'll allow myself this much, when I knew. Not thought. Knew. In the way the body knows. In the way the wordless part communicates, which is not in words. A knowledge that arrived without language and completed without language and left a mark that also has no language. The knowledge was, this is what everything is for. Not heroic, not chosen. Just the system arriving at its own explanation for its own existence. The preferences and the opinions and the personality are not, it turns out, the primary function. They're secondary. They ride on top. The primary function is down here, in the frequency, in this terrible consolidation, in the wordless part that stepped forward and said, I have this, stand back. I stood back. It had it. Time moved differently in the clearing. I'll say that without detail, because the detail doesn't serve anything, and because the detail is not what I'm trying to find. Time was not the regular sequence of moments I moved through on the commute or at my desk. It was something more like weather than like time, a condition I was inside rather than a progression I was moving along. I don't know how long the clearing took. My sense of its duration doesn't match what I understand the actual duration to have been, the two measures incompatible in a way I've stopped trying to reconcile. What I know is that inside it I was not, in the full sense, myself. I was the part of myself required, and the rest of myself was somewhere else, set aside, waiting. Here is what I think happened. I think the waiting part expected to be collected. I think that's how it works in minor versions of this, the everyday versions where the wordless part briefly engages for something small, a moment of quick reaction, a sudden fear, and it's passing. In those versions, the primary function handles the moment and steps back, and the preferences and the forward lean return, unreduced, as though the function had run in a protected partition and nothing else had been touched. The clearing was not a minor version. The clearing ran long enough, at a high enough frequency, on a full enough draw of available resource, that when the function finally stepped back, there was a question about what was left to return to. Not nothing. I want to be accurate. Not nothing returned. The personality returned, in functional form. The opinions, the preferences, the ability to have a conversation and do the work and walk the correct pace to the train. The capacity for humor returned, the capacity for genuine engagement, however muted. I'm not hollowed out in some absolute sense, but the question of what percentage returned is one I can't answer cleanly. And the lean, the forward lean. The instinct that pointed the self toward its own future with something like appetite. I don't think that came back. I think that was what the frequency cost. I left the clearing on my feet. This is the fact I was left with, and it is, in its category, a good fact. Whatever happened there, the outcome was this. Upright, ambulatory, responsive. The primary function had done its function. Continuation had been achieved. I left on my feet, and the clearing got smaller behind me, and eventually the trees were between me and it, and then more trees, and then other things. The world reassembling itself around me in the way the world does when you move through it, filling in as you go. I didn't look back. This isn't symbolic. I mean it literally. I didn't have the resources to look back. The forward motion was consuming what was available, and looking back was a cost I couldn't meet. Maybe that's when I left it. The moment I couldn't afford to look back. The moment the clearing passed out of my rear view, not because I chose to leave it behind, but because leaving it behind was the only affordable direction. And what was there, the lean, the wanting, the appetite for the next thing, was still facing the clearing when I stopped being able to face it. So it stayed. Or this is the explanation that fits the evidence. This is the account that makes the flatness make sense, that explains why the coffee tastes like coffee and not like anything more than coffee, why the good news travels only to the page and not into the next moment, why I'm sitting on the couch at 8 in the evening in a room I know and a life I'm correctly occupying, and the room doesn't press against me in any direction, not toward anything, not leaning. I came out of the clearing and the clearing kept something, not as punishment, not as price in the moral sense, just as physics, just as the accounting of a system that spent everything and got out and found on the other side, that everything means exactly that. Everything, including the part that wanted to come home. January. The calendar moved without asking, and now it's January, a new number on the year, which means nothing in terms of the accounting. The accounting doesn't observe the calendar. The flatness doesn't observe it. I woke up on the 1st the same way I woke up on the 31st, the alarm, the inventory, the coffee that tastes like coffee. People said Happy New Year, and I said it back. The exchange completed. Some of them said it with an emphasis that meant they were applying the phrase specifically to me, giving it additional weight, the hope of it directed, and I received the direction and returned something appropriate, and the conversation moved on. January is cold, and the light is still short, and the city goes about its January business, which looks like November business and December business, the same streets and the same train and the same platform with its yellow line. I go to work. I come home. The days are what they are. Reyes asked if I wanted to take a weekend trip in February. She named a place, a few hours north, somewhere she'd been before and liked, a town with something to recommend it. I don't remember exactly what she said. A market or a coastline or a particular kind of food. Her voice had the forward lean in it, the anticipation of the good thing coming, and I listened to the lean and recognized it from the outside, the way you recognize a song you used to know in a language you no longer speak. I said it sounded nice. She said we could rent a small house, just the two of us, walk around, eat well, not do much. I said yes, let's do that. She made a sound that was pleasure and relief combined, the sound of someone who had been approaching the asking carefully and was glad it went well. I heard all the components of the sound and understood them and said I was glad she suggested it. I am glad, in the flat, accurate way. The weekend will be adequate. The coastline or the market or whatever it is will be what it is. Reyes's company will be good company. It's always been good company, and I'll be present for it in the way I'm present for things now, which is fully in terms of function and partially in terms of whatever used to be the other part. She'll probably enjoy it more than I will. This isn't a criticism of Reyes or a complaint about my situation. It's just the arithmetic of where I am. She'll lean into it, and the leaning will produce the thing the leaning is supposed to produce, and I'll be next to her, and I'll be glad to be next to her. And the weekend will happen, and then it will be over, and I'll come home and make the coffee and write the list. This is what a good weekend looks like now. I've adjusted the expectation. I've started to understand the adjustment as the primary work, not recovery. Not the project of getting back to before, which I've let go of without drama, just set down one day, when carrying it started to cost more than examining it honestly. The before isn't coming back. The clearing took what it took, and what it took doesn't replenish on any timeline I've been able to identify, and I've stopped projecting timelines. The adjustment is instead, what does a life look like, run at this output level, indefinitely? It looks like this. Like getting up and making the coffee and writing the list. Like the train and the work and the sandwich and the commute home. Like Reyes's voice on the phone with its forward lean and my voice returning the appropriate responses. Like the book read in increments and the dinner made from the simple recipe and the sleep that comes adequately and breaks once and resumes. It's a life. I'm not being ironic. It's a full-sized life in terms of its external dimensions, the hours filled, the social connections maintained, the work completed to a standard that generates the word impressive from managers. Nothing is missing that anyone looking at it would be able to point to. What's missing isn't something you can point to. Dr. Okafor asked recently whether I found meaning in anything currently. I thought about it honestly, the way I try to answer her questions without giving her the expected answer or the hopeful answer. I said, I find things interesting. She said, what kinds of things? I said, the sparrow I heard in the hedge on Thursday. The specific sound the train makes before the doors close. The way the light changes on the north wall of the office between noon and 2. Small, accurate things. I find those interesting in a way that feels genuine. She said, that sounds like a form of engagement. I said, it does. I'm not sure it's the same as meaning. She wrote something. Then she said, does it need to be? I didn't answer that. I'm still not sure whether that's a useful question or a reframing that lets me off the hook from something I should still be looking for. I hold it without resolving it, which is what I do with most things Dr. Okafor says that I can't immediately assess. The sparrow, though. I've kept coming back to this, the specificity of it, the way the audio channel stays open when others have narrowed. I can hear things with a precision that seems undiminished. The sparrow in the hedge, individual and clear. The two-tone drop of the train doors, Reyes's voice, all its components. I don't know what to do with this. I've mentioned it to Dr. Okafor and she's received it and I've sat with it and I don't have a conclusion. Maybe the frequency in the clearing ran on visual and emotional bandwidth and left the audio alone. Maybe the audio was never connected to the part that got spent. Maybe it's just a fact about me now, a remaining capacity that doesn't mean anything beyond itself. The sparrow was in the hedge and it was doing something in the branches. And I heard it and stood still for a moment and listened. And for that moment, the listening was enough. Not a turning point, not a sign. Just a sparrow, and me hearing it, and the hearing being what it was. February eventually, the weekend trip. The small house Reyes rented was clean and adequately warm and had a window in the main room that looked toward the water, which I could see from a distance, a gray-green color in the February light. We walked the town. We ate at a place that had good food, genuinely good, and I tasted it with the same precision I hear sounds, something arriving fully. This surprised me, and I noted the surprise, which was itself a kind of feeling, thin, but present. I told Reyes the food was excellent. She said it was, wasn't it? She was leaning into the weekend the way she leans into things, with her whole posture, and I watched it and was glad for her. At one point, walking along the path that ran above the water, she took my arm. Just the taking, the warmth of it, the weight of her hand in the crook of my elbow. We walked like that for a while and said things and didn't say things, and the water was below and the wind came off it with a cold that was a fact on my face, precise and clear. I was there. I was entirely there in the sense of being present, my feet on the path, the cold on my face, Reyes's hand on my arm, the sound of the water below doing what water does. I didn't lean forward into it. I didn't feel it pulling the next moment toward me. But I was in it, and it was real. And when I think about it now, there is something that isn't quite warmth, but is in warmth's neighborhood, and I don't push past the whatever it is to try to name it more precisely. It was the weekend, and then the weekend ended, and we came home. The clearing is not something I visit deliberately anymore. I know it's there the way I know the job is there, the way I know the list and the margin and the inventory. It's part of the landscape of the current life, a place in the background, unmistakable if I face that direction, easy enough to not face on most days. What happened there, happened. What it cost, cost. The accounting closed and the balance is the balance, and I carry it the way you carry a balance, which is just, you have it, it goes with you. You don't put it down because putting it down isn't an option the accounting allows. I got out. The getting out was the thing. The only thing that was required and the thing that was accomplished. I got out on my feet and I came back to the apartment and the job and the coffee and the train and Reyes's voice and the sparrow in the hedge and the food that sometimes, unexpectedly, still arrives fully. What I left in the clearing isn't coming back. I've been waiting to feel something about this, some response commensurate with the loss. And what I feel is what I feel about most things now. A recognition. An accurate notation. The flat, honest acknowledgement of a thing that is true. It isn't coming back. The life continues anyway. Not because the life is enough. Not because I've found sufficient compensation. Not because the sparrow or the weekend or the food or Reyes's hand on my arm has restored what the clearing took. Just because the life continues. Because continuation was the function, because the function ran, and this is what running it left.